Today, December 9, is World Anti-Corruption Day, and according to a statement from the UN Secretary General, corruption is a global phenomenon that strikes hardest at the poor, hinders inclusive economic growth, and robs essential services of badly needed funds. He says the world and its people can no longer afford nor tolerate corruption. So, on a day like this, and in view of the many corruption issues circulating in Ghana, how can we kick out corruption in our country? What role are you playing to end corruption, and how do we break the corruption chain? My name is Stephen Enti, and this is today's big story. Now, governments, private sector and civil society can all play their part to eliminate corruption. But over the years, the fight against corruption has been an impossible task, with inconsistent efforts by these same players who have the mandate to kick it out. So what could you do, you and I do different to eliminate corruption? What are we doing or not doing right? We're joined on the telephone line now by Manasseh Azuri Awene, who is a senior broadcast journalist with Joy News. He has been covering a lot of corruption issues in the country over the past few years. He joins us now. Good evening, Manasseh.
Good evening, Steve.
So now the public sector corruption, according to the UN, it strikes hardest at the poor. It hinders inclusive economic growth and robs essential services of badly needed funds. How bad is the situation in Ghana from your standpoint, and especially from the work you have been doing?
Well, Steve, I'll say it's very bad because I can say it's extremely bad. Because sometimes, apart from what we uncover in government circles, corruption is actually everywhere. And I can tell you, 2 years ago, I took a patient who was in coma for at least 3 days to the Korle Bu Teaching Hospital. And the handler of the patient had to pay a bribe in order to get a stretcher to take this young man to the accident center of the Korle Bu Teaching Hospital. And that tells you how bad it is, because if at a point of death you'd have to pay a bribe before you get a stretcher to the accident center, it's really disturbing. For some few years now, you've been able to get to know what happens in some serious government institutions, some public policy interventions targeted at the poor, JIDA, SADA, and the rest. We see how people took almost the 80% of it and then leaving the 20% targeted for meant for the program. So the situation is really bad.
It's really bad. And now, one of the biggest discussions today was the president's claim that some 300 people are currently being persecuted. There is no evidence to suggest this is so, right?
No, that I do not know. With regards to SADA, nobody is being prosecuted. With regards to Suba, nobody is being prosecuted. JIDA, we know of only 2 individuals. That is Abuga Pele and then Philip Asibit. And then some national service persons, some of their directors. And I'm even told some of them have been cleared after they went to the BNI, but some are also being processed. So as we speak, nobody really knows where that number is coming from. Perhaps if a teacher or somebody, we know day in, day out, if you go to the courts, we have people who come to the court with maybe 200, 300 Ghana cedis kind of petty theft, and they are held there. So nobody really knows where this 300
are coming from. Right. Manasseh, I'll hold you briefly. I want us to broaden the discussion. And Professor Goski Alabi, who is Dean of Students at UPSA, is joining us now. Good evening, ma'am, and thanks for your time.
Good evening, and thank you too.
Yes. Now,
I'm not Dean of Students, I'm Dean of Graduate Studies.
Okay.
I'm taking somebody else's position. Yes, please.
Right. I apologize for that, Dean of Graduate Studies.
Yes,
now,
please.
The discussion over kicking out corruption has always usually been politicized instead of focusing on the key issues that need to be addressed. For example, cutting out bureaucracy in the public service. How would you describe commitments of successive governments to root out corruption?
Yes, thank you very much. I think that when it comes to the issue of corruption, it is a very thorny issue, not only for Ghana, but for many countries. And it all depends depends on what we call as a people what we call corruption. So the question I like to ask all Ghanaians is that when we say corruption, what exactly do we mean? Because I don't know. And we need to bear in mind that there is no consensus around the definition or the concept of corruption. But as a country, let me say that it will be very difficult for us to handle something that we do not know clearly what it is.
That's right.
So we need to be clear amongst ourselves, Ghanaians, what we all mean, first of all, by corruption.
I mean, I do. Yeah, sure. Carry on, ma'am.
Yes, go ahead.
No, that's okay.
The second point I like to make is that whenever we say corruption, we all look at the leadership. Instead of looking at the leadership, we look at people in key positions, particularly politicians. But it is unfortunate. And if we should go down, we would realize, for example, when we saw this documentary on the Soul Ticket, is that right? The Soul Ticket, the one that had to do with DVLA.
Yeah.
Where we saw people, excuse my language, who were insane, even getting, how do we call it, driver's license. Is it the leaders? Is it the presidency? Is it the politicians? Is it the MPs? Is it the ministers who were perpetuating that act of
right? So what you're raising,
immorality?
what you're bringing our mind to is the fact that corruption affects all of us. But
Correct.
corruption is not only the role or duty of public service officials or people elected into office or leaders, but all of us individuals, including the private sector.
Including the private sector. Because a man goes to a public service office to have something done, and it is urgent. It would surprise you that sometimes or oftentimes it is not the people in the public office who would initiate the process of giving and reciprocity. The giving is offered.
It's offered.
It's offered. In fact, they are induced to it sometimes. So, is it the people in the public office who induce themselves? I'm not saying they don't have a role to play. They do play a role. But we, as the people who form the government, all of us individually who constitute the leadership, would have to question ourselves how we contribute to the seat of corruption, and therefore how we can uproot that seat of corruption. We cannot uproot the seat of corruption if we keep pointing fingers at other people.
At other people.
All of us, yes, are severally and collectively responsible for rooting out the seat of corruption from our country. And until we understand that, and we are willing to make sacrifices and be patient to allow the systems to work, to allow the laws to operate, then we cannot do it.
Right.
The third point I want to make is the role of the media.
That's right.
In corruption.
In the fight against corruption.
And the fight against corruption. What is the role of the media in the fight against corruption? How can the media promote, support, and protect the law of the system to work and allow it to work appropriately?
Right.
Let me give an example. We have situations, and that's the next point I want to make. The role of the rule of law.
The rule of law.
Controversial, sorry, but it is a very critical point. What is the role of the rule of law in the fight against corruption? In the situation where it takes forever for cases that go to court to be ruled, and in the situation where people have all manner of perceptions about the rule of law and its contribution to the perpetuation of corruption and illegality in our country. What is the role of the civil society activists and the human rights activists who will jump at any small thing and say, this is a human rights abuse.
Yeah.
And therefore, let us look into it critically before the necessary actions are taken.
So really, I mean, from what you're saying, it does mean that every facet of our economy must first come to terms with predefining what corruption is. I mean, the media has mostly represented corruption to mean perhaps a misapplication of public funds and, you know, misuse and abuse of office, etc., etc. When simple things like inducing people to offer services for us, to issue us driver's licenses, etc., all play a part in the collective definition of what corruption is. And until we tackle that, we're not making any progress.
Yes.
Right.
That is the point.
I'll pause you briefly. I still have on the other telephone line Manasseh Azuri Awini, who is an investigative journalist with us here at Joy News, who has done extensive work on JIDA and SUBA and all the corruption issues that were unveiled towards the end of last year and this year. Now, Manasseh, if you are there, you did hear Professor Alabi saying that it's critical that the media plays a key role in the fight against corruption. Do you think as journalists we are doing enough?
No, we are not doing enough.
What can we do different? I know that we have been drawn into the issue of solidarity, taking money, an inducement for writing stories, etc. That's another issue. But if we talk about going into investigative reporting to unveil issues of corruption, we're not doing anything, right?
We are not doing much. We are doing less than 5% of what we should be doing.
That's very bad.
And part of the problem is that Martin Luther King once said, darkness cannot drive out darkness. And I think a corrupt media cannot drive out corruption in the society. And so beyond Sole, I can tell you what we call Sole. That's a list of our problems. And I've said it on a number of platforms, that we ourselves are part of the corruption. And until we get honest with ourselves, until we begin to know who we are supposed to serve, until we stop being voices of politicians and voices of business people against the ordinary voiceless people we should be championing, whose cause we should be championing. We cannot do that ourselves. So what we should be doing is that we should be honest to ourselves as journalists and know that our job, as defined by the Constitution, is to hold people accountable. And we cannot do that when we are corrupt ourselves. When we journalists want to be seen to be riding in the best of cars, be building and sleeping in mansions our salaries cannot afford. We should know what we are called to do. We should take journalism as a calling and not as a means of making money. When we do that and honestly, we want to do our work devoid of political affiliations and considerations and stand for the truth, I can tell you, when people have their names in the media for being corrupt, they have sleepless nights.
Right.
That alone would be a disincentive to go into corrupt practices, because for now, they do that, they get the money, they get some media people compromised, and we hail them left, right, and center and cover them up. And that is a big problem in this country. Big problem.
Manasseh, we're grateful for your time. I'm afraid that we'll have to end our conversation, but thanks very much for joining us on today's Big Story. We still have Professor Godsky Alabi still on the other telephone line. So, Prof, let me ask you, what can individuals, private sector, state institutions do different if we are to make strides in the fight against corruption?
First of all, I think that we as individuals will have to learn to make sacrifices. It's not going to be easy, but we should be prepared mentally to face the delays that would come our way, to face the many other implications of not being, a part of the process of deepening corruption in our country. But beyond these sacrifices means that we also need to have people who have to ensure that they are holding people accountable, like Manasseh said, that the systems and the structures that have been put in place are working. Because there is a extent to which individuals can make sacrifices. Where the system and the structures do not support the sacrifices, then it becomes very difficult. For example, if you have an issue and you go report, issues with Whistleblowers Act, so forth and so on, I mean, what kind of protection is there for you? Is it to the extent that if you have started any harm in respect of doing that, the system can help redress the situation for you, and that the redress can come in a speedy manner? That is one. The other thing is that who is watching over who? Who is holding who accountable and how? Okay, so if we are not able to put all these systems in place, then of course it's going to be very difficult. But lastly, let me say that we need to stop looking at the wrong places and look everywhere that we can collectively work together to make our country a more, reliable country, a country that people can beat their chest and say, indeed, we know that beyond political stability, the structures and the systems are working, and to improve our corruption index.
Right. Thanks very much for your time, Professor Goski Alabi. We're grateful that you could join us on today's Big Story. Now, earlier today, the minority in Parliament made a startling claim that it has evidence that the €1 billion bond secured by government in September this year was used to settle debt owed to the Bank of Ghana. The minority says government lied when it said the money was used to finance ongoing capital projects. Let's hear Dr. Anthony Akoto Osei, minority spokesperson on finance.
HESMA's role, that's at the prerogative of the president. Now, as I said, I'm aware. I've been told that the president directed that Bank of Ghana should not swallow, but it has swallowed. This is the evidence. It is not me creating this account. So, if the president knows this, he should do the appropriate thing. But it is prerogative for the credibility of government, of the nation. Because, the roadshow was all around the States and Europe. And, you go to Boston, you go to LA, you meet investors, you said, oh, we are going to, and in fact, I'll show you a list of the previous one where they came to Parliament, and we asked them to give us a breakdown. I had it here. Later on, they brought it to Parliament and gave us a list. And it's there. So the investors say, my company wants to invest 200 million. For what? Say, you had the ministries, energy, works and housing, what projects? But they went ahead and said, okay, we'll loan you on condition that you prioritize according to yourself. And this is here. This is not me saying. Page 22. Use of proceeds is here, page 22. So I quoted exactly from there.
Well, now the Deputy Minority Leader, Dominic Nito, now joins us on telephone now. Good evening, sir, and thanks for your time.
Good evening. Good evening to the people listening to us.
Thank you very much that you could join us at such a short notice. I know you're busy, but your press conference coincides with the World Anti-Corruption Day. Was it purposely planned that way to send a signal that government is being corrupt over the Eurobond issue?
No, my brother, that's not it. We felt that it was a matter that we needed to put forward as quickly as possible to the people of Ghana,
right,
and let them know what really is going on. It just happened that it fell on this particular great day.
Okay.
But otherwise, no, it wasn't a planned thing. We believe that we have stumbled upon information. Dr. Bawumia had earlier raised this matter when he was in the UK. The government came out to deny it. And when we came across the information, the evidence, we decided to put it out there for the people of Ghana to see. Anybody who casually looks at the spreadsheet, the monthly releases that the Bank of Ghana does, like any other bank, they normally, the monetary release they give you. Anybody who looks at that spreadsheet will confidently see that as at the end of August 2014, the Bank of Ghana had financed government deficit by 10.66 billion Ghana cedis. And by the end of September, when the Eurobond had come inside, the Bank of Ghana claimed that on at that place when they were reporting that government indebtedness had reduced by 3.2 billion, which was equal to the amount of money the Eurobond that came into that account. October, they repeated the same thing. So it's very clear that that money had been absorbed by the Bank of Ghana into paying government debt. It was not used for any other.
So really, what kind of explanation are you seeking from government over this to be convinced that the money was not misapplied or used wrongly for the purpose for which government said they used it for?
There's no explanation. When you do something, you are caught pants down. I mean, if you are stealing something and people see you, brother, like stealing, you are stealing. I mean, you are caught pants down. There is no explanation. Government has not sourced any other 1 billion from anywhere to be able to reduce its debt from 10.6 billion to 7.65 billion. It's not possible. Government hasn't gotten any other source of income from anywhere equivalent to the exact amount that the Eurobond brought in between August and September. It is only the Eurobond money that came in. That $988 million came in. You know, the net receipt was 988 million. It was not up to the 1 billion.
Right.
We raised 1 billion, but the net was 988. What that, if you multiply by the exchange rate at that time, 3.2, is exactly the same amount that the Bank of Ghana claims our indebtedness to the bank has reduced to. So it has reduced from August ending of 10.66 billion to September ending of 7.65 billion. And you know, if you go to October end, you will see that the Bank of Ghana still claims that our indebtedness had reduced to 7.63 billion. So it was not a mistake. It was a calculated thing. Bank of Ghana has been reporting steadily that government has paid 3.2 billion Ghana cedi. Where did the government get that kind of money from? So that was exactly the same amount that the Eurobond brought. It was the Eurobond money.
So honorable, granted that the government did not use the money for the capital projects that it said it used it for, and it used for something else. Is there an error in that?
Big misapplication, big error. I mean, you cannot borrow money from investors that, well, we want to pay off the original Eurobond of 750 million. We want to pay off match counterpart funding and pay off counterpart funding for the coastal communities to build a landing site for them to do the Eastern Corridor route, to do the Western Corridor route. We want to also do the railway line. We also want to pay off Ghana infrastructure fund, 150 million inside. We want to invest the money into energy. We want to invest the money into roads. We want to invest the money into local government, and hope that it will generate money for us to pay in future. It was based on that the investors felt that, look, the plan you have given is fair enough. You will invest the money. You will get the money back to be able to pay us. And they gave you. Then you take the money and come and pay your... It's not heard of. Right. That is a breach of trust, both to the citizens and then to the investors. Who's going to trust us again? So,
Honorable, what exactly do you want from government? I mean, by the issues that you've raised. Yeah.
We are asking government to confirm to us that indeed they have taken the money and misapplied it. And that risk, that's what they have done, risk Ghana's sovereign rating being dropped furthermore. And that will be a laughing stock out there. And that we have jeopardized the image of this nation. That's what we are doing. And that people responsible should be punished. That's what we are saying. Because the finance minister is still saying that, well, I have issued a check, I have even disbursed some money, when there is no money. That's what we are saying. The government is not being truthful to the people. This government is not being truthful to the people of Ghana. This government is not being truthful to the IMF. This government is not being truthful to the investors. This government is not being truthful to our development partners. Because the development partners have brought money. You have to pay the counterpart funding. You say you are raising a Eurobond 1 billion to come and pay. You have refused. Okay? So the government is not being truthful in all aspects. And that is seriously very bad for us as a nation. I mean, if not, what explanation would anybody give when the money came in September, the budget was completed somewhere in October, November ending, and that money does not reflect in the budget? Can anybody give that explanation? If the money is there, why is it not being reflected in this particular budget? Look, my brother, the money is gone. It's finished. Bank of Ghana has swallowed it. We have used in paying the debt that government gave because government could not have taken more than 2 billion in terms of deficit financing for Bank of Ghana. If they do that, it goes against the law. Remember that our tax revenue cannot be more than 20 billion for 2014. So government cannot take more than 2 billion. Otherwise, it breaches the Bank of Ghana law. Right. And the governor will not sit down for that law to be preached. So what he did by giving them 5.3 billion, because remember that within 8 months, by August, he had given them 5.3 billion.
Right, Mr.
So
Neto,
what the governor of the Bank of Ghana is supposed to do is just supposed to reduce it.
Mr. Neto, I'm afraid that we might have to end our conversation.
We may have to get more time to talk about
exactly.
But the government is simply not being truthful to the people.
Okay, we're grateful though, but I must say that we made efforts to get government reaction over this, but unfortunately we haven't been able to get any firm commitment or statement coming from government. Now, Prince Kumi is Chief Executive Officer of the Institute of Chartered Economist Ghana. He's joining us now. Good evening, Prince. We're grateful you could join us. Good evening, Prince. Hello, Prince. Can you hear me? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good. So we've heard a lot about this particular €1 billion bond. I'm sure you were listening to Dominic Neto. Do you think that? Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, now go back.
Okay, so I'm saying that we have heard a lot about this particularly €1 billion bond. Do you think the transaction has been transparent enough to make people stop doubting exactly what government used the money for?
Thank you. Is that Kevin?
Yes, please.
Yeah, good evening to your viewers. Yes, this Euro bond, yes, we have all heard how it came in, but, sitting from outside, normally it's very difficult to know how factual some of the things are, some of the things said are actually. So what we are saying is that the understanding was that it's supposed to be used for capital expenditure. So there are some capital projects going on, and government is saying that is what we are using them for. Now, opposition has also found out that rather being used to, pay some debt, especially to balance central bank and so on. So now the whole thing is now about accountability. Government will now have to come out transparently to tell us, giving us evidence to show that, yes, this is what they are doing. That is all what I think government, the office is now government to come and provide.
Right, so, Mr. Kumi, I do know that the back and forth has gone on for a while. How should future bonds be managed to ensure accountability and transparency so people don't start doubting each time government receives a chunk of money from these bonds?
Whatever money that is taken, government is a machinery and it's made up of various departments and units. So whatever project that it must be used for, it must definitely get to this unit to be able to implement them. So when they get to this unit and they are being implemented, the whole thing is to do records and present them so that you and I can also follow what is going on. But definitely it must go into the government agencies and units to apply them.
Mr. Kumi, we're grateful for your time on today's Big Story. My name is Stephen Anti. Prince Kumi is the Chief Executive Officer of the Institute of Chartered Economists Ghana, and we're grateful that you could make time with us on today's Big Story. We'll be right back when Maran Turi has the interactive segment. Do stay.